Is it just me, or has competitive really started to suck lately? I mean, it's always had its problems in the past, but Season 5 has got to be the worst competitive experience I've ever had in Overwatch. People being toxic to one another,
You fucking suck really badly.
people throwing games by troll picking or going AFK, and no one giving two shits about the team composition. And not to mention, lever after lever after lever. And I for one am damn sick of it. Hey guys, Simpson2142 here, reporting to you from the internal pits of Elo Hell in Overwatch. And my god, has it been feeling more Elo Hell than it ever has been. I've noticed that over the past few weeks of competitive that people have just lost the will to win. No one really seems to care about working as a team and picking heroes that have good chemistry with each other. Instead, it just seems to be an every man for himself attitude. People treating it more like a quick play where they just want to play their favourite hero and that's it. Although sometimes when I look at their stats, they're actually playing a hero that they've had near to no time with, and that includes quick play time as well. Some guy has picked a Genji, a Hanzo or a Tracer, and they have absolutely no idea how to use them, but for some reason they just pick them anyway. And why is this? Why has there been such an increase in this toxic lone wolf attitude, and can it be recovered? I hear a few people saying that this is just the tilting point for Overwatch now, that it's the beginning of the end. This is where Overwatch will start going downhill, player attitude will get worse and worse, and the game will slowly die, leaving nothing left but a player base full of trolls, toxic behaviour, and of course hackers. Now personally, I don't think this is the case. Overwatch is still an incredibly popular game that is constantly evolving with new heroes, new maps and balance changes which keep things nice and fresh. The developers are still showing that they're heavily invested in the game and that they're not going to leave it to gather dust whilst they move on to focus their attention on newer, shinier projects. But that being said, I do believe Overwatch has reached a low point in terms of recent competitive play, and I think I can point out several factors which have led to this. First up, and this will be controversial, but I believe the shift of gameplay from Death Ball to Dive Comp has been a big contributor to this. Not because Dive Comp itself is a bad style of gameplay, but because most people trying to pull off its style of gameplay are struggling. Dive Comp compared to Death Ball is a much more difficult style of gameplay to pull off. The heroes involved require much more clutch moments to pull off a successful push. For example, Genji being able to dive the backline, avoid enemy fire, as well as make a quick pick on a healer. Whilst this is happening, that Genji is also relying on his team to make clutch gameplay themselves. A friendly diva, for example, has to also be diving in and deploying a well-timed defense matrix to stop the barrage of incoming fire on that squishy Genji. The healers themselves must also be on the ball trying to keep that diva alive so that she can be there to keep distracting the attention away from the Genji. And if one of these three factors fails, then the whole push is effectively ruined. It needs a tight combination of individual skill and cooperative synchronization. And that's going to involve putting a lot of trust into your team, which in competitive, especially when solo queuing, can be very difficult indeed. I think as the dive comp meta has progressed over time, people have started to become less and less trustworthy of their fellow teams. Too many failed pushes where your team has not fully supported you has started to put people into a more lone wolf mindset, thinking that they can carry the weight and then just bring their team along for the ride. And this is why, at least from my perspective, that we're starting to see more and more people picking DPS roles over tanks and healers. DPS heroes offer the highest carrying potential for an individual skill, as well as offering the least dependence on your fellow teammates. You only have to look at hero picks for the top players in Overwatch to see proof is in the pudding. An amazing tank player can only last so long without a solid supply of healing, and an amazing healer cannot 1v1 most enemies who will happen to dive upon them. Deathball comps were far more forgiving for player error. It's far simpler to run as the team is just gathering behind the Reinhardt shield. It requires a less spatial awareness as you're closer together, and should you get in trouble because your teammates are much closer together, they're there to offer you support. But I don't think it's fair to put too much blame on the dive meta for this recent toxicity. Other issues also stem from there being far too little carrot and far too little stick in competitive mode. Let me explain. Let's look at the rewards for competitive gameplay. The only reward competitive has really offered players for taking part is by awarding them competitive points, in which these points can be saved up and spent on golden weapons. Which was pretty cool when the game first came out, as gold weapons were rare and very unique to your selected hero choices. But now 5 seasons in, it's really not uncommon to see a golden weapon on the battlefield at all, especially amongst higher ranks where far more competitive points are received at the end of each season. Whereas in the past a golden weapon Widowmaker would lead you to believe that this was a highly skilled player who's clearly focusing hard on their Widowmaker gameplay, now it means hardly anything at all. So the reward system could perhaps be altered to have something that is, well, a bit more rewarding for your hard work and efforts. I've always thought as a basic suggestion that a similar system to the reward system could be implemented that's already in place for the 3v3s or the 1v1s, where after a certain number of wins you're gifted with a free loot box. It's simple, but it's better than nothing. Now on the flip side, let's talk about the lack of stick, or punishment in competitive. 5 seasons into competitive, and I think people are starting to wear a little thin over the seemingly lack of punishment toxic and troll players seem to receive. We're always told to report players who are being rude and abusive, we're told to report players who are purposely trolling and throwing, and we're told that if a player leaves repeatedly in a game, they're going to get punished for it. So in theory, if the system is working, we should at this point be seeing the lowest point of those kind of players in game, as they've been caught and filtered out of the games. But if anything, it seems to be the opposite. And there's just no indication to give that these people have received any forms of punishment. It'd be nice if there was a system in place that would notify you if any of the players you've reported in the past have actually received any punishment later on. Like a pop-up message at the main menu that says something along the lines of, "Hey, remember that player Hanzo Main 69 that you reported for going AFK because someone else picked Hanzo? Well, because that player received a large number of similar reports, they have now been banned from competitive altogether. Thank you for helping to improve the Overwatch experience." Something like that just shows that your reports aren't just going to be put straight down the drain and are actually going to be factored into consideration. But my personal biggest gripe with Overwatch Competitive at the moment has got to be the levers. I have had a ridiculous amount of levers in my games as of recent. And as we all know, once your team is down to a 5v6, it's 99% certainty that you're going to end up losing the match. And you're still going to be punished for it by losing SR. I have rambled so much in the past about why this system is broken and how it is still implemented, so I'm not going to waste too much time rambling about it again. But the arguments put forward for not taking the rest of the team's SR is, well, people could abuse this system. Say that in a group of 4, players in that group of 4 could take turns in leaving a game, so that the other 3 won't lose SR. Well, the simple solution to that is resolved by making it that if you're a member of a group and one of those group members leaves the game, then you will still take punishment, but the rest of the team that have no connection with this group member whatsoever will remain unchanged. That is honestly a lot fairer than what we have now, and the second most prominent argument I see put forward is that it will create a toxic environment as people will bully others to leave a game. Create a toxic environment? Jeff Kaplan, you've told us yourself that you are in fact a platinum player, so you of all people should know very well that games can already be an incredibly toxic environment. It's hardly a peaceful tranquility of tolerance and understanding in its current state, and I really don't think this new lever system is going to make matters that much worse. Anyway guys, that's gonna do it for me today. I'm sorry it was quite a ramble of a video, but it's just something that I've been needing to get off my chest after weeks and weeks of this frustrating gameplay. Let me know if you've also been experiencing these kind of problems in Season 5 too, and also comment your rank there to see if there's any correlation between the lack of team play and toxicity and the rank you're in. Hopefully with this new edition of Doomfist which has just come out, as well as the buffs to Zarya and Reinhardt, the dive comp meta will start to fizzle out, and we'll start to see a fresh style of gameplay that people can perhaps work better together with a lot more effective results. But only time will tell on that one, and until then guys, take care.